Well, good afternoon, and once more, we're at Comp 422, Comp 620, Information Privacy and Security. I started it. Thank you. Yes, today we're going to talk more about encryption. As you remember, we talked about encryption last time. We're doing some more. We'll talk about some of the popular encryption algorithms and the encryption modes, and then talk about hash systems. As a review, cryptography is basically taking plain text, which can be text or files or programs or documents or pictures or bits, takes the plain text, runs it through an encryption algorithm with the proper key, forms it into ciphertext, which, if you look at it, just looks like a bunch of random bits. And then, if you have the proper encryption key through the proper decryption algorithm, it converts it back to the plain text just the way it was when you started. The whole purpose being nobody else can read the ciphertext, only the person who has the appropriate key can decrypt it. It's used a lot. I think right now 95% of online web traffic is encrypted. That's the HTTPS. The S is secure. Most people are using that, and so they're encrypting everything that goes over the web just about. Studies showed that 68% of the companies surveyed used encryption to protect things. And HIPAA, it's a set of regulations for medical records. They must be encrypted. And so there's lots of stuff out there that is encrypted. Something called crypto shredding. I didn't mention that before. Instead of actually deleting all sorts of information, if you are encrypting the information as you store it, then an easy way to remove access to it is destroy the key. If you have a key someplace and you destroy the only copy of the key, well, then nobody has copy of the data. That, of course, is much faster. The key is much, much shorter than the data almost all the time. Particularly if you have lots of data and it's on a slow device, like a thumb drive or something. So you can destroy the data, make it useless by erasing the decryption key. Last time we talked about substitution permutation stages. The AES and the DES algorithm look like this. That is, they go through several stages. You see there's a repeating set of stages here, where, at least in this example, they take the input data and they exclusive OR it, that's the K boxes represent exclusive OR, and exclusive OR it with the key. Then they go through S boxes, which is substitution. They give them the 3 bits of input, they do some substitution, in this case, give 3 bits output. Then they rearrange the bits go in some pattern, and they do it again. Usually most of the algorithms, every time they do a stage, the key goes through some permutation to make it different. And perhaps there's a minor difference between the S boxes on each stage, and maybe even the permutations. The X boxes, as I mentioned, are just a substitution. Here's an example. You get this bit pattern in, you get that bit pattern out. It can be any way you want it. Although cryptanalysis have shown that certain patterns are better than others. The permutations are just rearranging the bits. Bits come in, instead of bit 1 being in bit 1 position, it can go over to bit 27, bit 56 can go over to bit 2, and just rearrange it any way they want to. Sometimes they expand it. Sometimes there are more output bits than input bits. Sometimes it's the other way around. Well, we talked about several algorithms. DES, the Data Encryption Standard, is an older encryption system, and now it's deprecated. You're not supposed to use it anymore because it's found to be relatively weak. There are better algorithms, particularly AES. AES is very popular. It's used an awful lot. It encrypts 128 bits. What is that? That's 16 bytes. Yeah, 16 bytes of information. And it uses, there's 3 different modes. It can either be 128 bits, 194 bits, or 256-bit keys, and it goes through different numbers of stages. If it's 128 bits, I think it goes through 10 stages, 12 stages for 194, and 14 stages for 256. So if you're using the 256, it really scrambles it up. Although 128 bits scrambles it up, sufficient for most mortals. A lot of the processors that you can buy these days have instructions, hardware to help do the AES encryption. And I might note that, yes, imagine you have 256 bits. Well, how do you use brute force? That means try all possible keys. Well, that would be 2 to the 256, which is about 10 to the 75 possible keys. And if you could do 1,000 keys every nanosecond, which is faster than anybody's computer can do, it would take longer than the current age of the universe. So take a long time. All right, there are basically, AES is a symmetric key algorithm. That is, the key to encrypt is exactly the same as the key to decrypt. So you use the same key. You have to get the key from the sender to the receiver in some secure way. Use the same key to decrypt. Asymmetric, sometimes known as public key encryption, uses a different key to encrypt than the key to decrypt. They are mathematically related. So say you have the public key from someplace publicly available, you encrypt it, get the ciphertext, and then somebody with the private key that relates to that public key can decrypt it. Anybody can encrypt something that can see the data, but only the person who has the private key can decrypt it. And it uses a very simple mathematical system. There are just 3 numbers referred to as D, E, and N. N is the modular, so they just take the message, which is just a bunch of bits. You can think of any bunch of bits as being a big integer. You raise it to the power E, mod N, that is remainder dividing it by N, and you get C, the ciphertext. And then you just take that ciphertext, raise it to the power D, mod N, and you get back to the message. And we talked about this. You start by finding a couple of very large prime numbers. Prime numbers helps because then the N has only got 2 factors. You multiply it together, it gives you N. Then you take and find with the tOITN of N, which is P minus 1 times P minus Q, gives you another big number. And you find E, which does not divide into the tOITN. The greatest common divisor is 1, meaning the only number that divides is 1. Okay, now that you got E, then you find D, which is the mathematical inverse. That is D times E equals 1, mod the tOITN of N. So now you've got D, E, and N. E and N become the public key. So people use E and N and encrypt things. And D is part of the secret key. If you know D, you can then decrypt it. I have some numbers here that are really simple. 3 and 11 are prime numbers. Multiply it together, you get 33. So that's N. Subtract 1. So that's 2 times 10 is 20. So that's your tOITN of N. We'll choose E as 7 because greatest common divisor is 7 and 20 is 1. You don't divide. The inverse is 3. 3 times 7 is 21. Mod 20 is a leftover remainder of 1, and that's what you need. You need something that gives you 1. That's the inverse. 2 numbers you multiply together and get 1. Okay, so those are our numbers. We have N is 33, E is 7, D is 3. Let's try it then. Assume your message is 5, and then 5 to the 7th mod 33 is 14. You can actually do that with a calculator. And then 14 cubed mod 33 is 5. It works, gets back there. Now, those are really small numbers, but they're small enough that I can do them with my calculator. Usually use really large numbers because N is often somewhere, well, sometimes 512, but usually I've seen 2,000 bits pretty common, sometimes even 4,000 bits, really large keys, really large numbers. You have to use fancy long number arithmetic to do this. You might note that the message, we have a message size, the message has to be less than N or up all the way up to 1 less than N because you're doing mod, otherwise it wouldn't fit. And of course that means you have log base 2 of N bits. All right, bigger the key, the stronger it is. I mean, if you're using AES, they generally use random bunch of bits. And you can just guess all of them. Imagine if there's only 3 bits in a key. but 2 to the 3 is 8. You just try all 8 possible combinations, which with a computer will take a blink of an eye, and then you'll look at all 8 of them and see which one looks good. Okay. And we have our first question of the day. Oops. Oh boy. See if we can get this to magically appear. All right, we'll do a poll. There, okay, everybody should see the question, maximum message. All right. If you don't have a particular card here, I've got more cards. Anybody need a card? Okay. Of course, is not like printing something with lots of black. Okay. Oh, okay, yes. And this recognition is not recognizing anything. Like that. All right. Okay, that's your answers. We'll come up with proper orientation. Everybody should have a card. You're holding the corner of the cup, you're holding it over the left. You got do that, it doesn't recognize. Oh. Gotcha. All righty. Okay. Oh boy. 3 A's, 2 B's, 4 C's, and a D, and 2 D's. Online, 73% of the people went for C. Okay, so usually the folks here in class are more on it, but today the answer is C, 32. Stop sharing. Okay, why? Because N is 33. That means you can, everything is mod N, mod 33. So you're getting the remainder of divided by 33, which can be a number between 0 and 32. So the largest number you can have is 32. We go with that? Now make it slightly more complex. If I can get this there. Another question. Yeah, that one figured out. Get your hand over part of it. Oh, there you go. That's, yeah. Get your hand over it, it gets confusing. Again, it's pretty slick. I really thought of this, but it's a good idea. Okay. All right. Here in class, there are 8 people thought it was B, 6 people thought it was D. Online, there were 4 people with thinking 7, and 4 people thought it was 64. Anyway, that's pretty bad because the answer is A, 5. 5? Yes, okay. Yes, you can get numbers up to 32. Log base 2 of 32 is 5. So you can represent a 5-bit number, numbers from 0 to 32. Actually, 0 to 31. You have an extra bit there. You have 30. There are 33 numbers between 0 and 32. 5 bits. Yeah, so log base 2 of 32. 32, which is actually like 5.044, but I rounded it off to 5. So do 5. Everybody got that? I think we'll have to practice our log-based 2s in the future. Okay. Computer science people ought to kind of understand those log bases because they appear all over the place. Okay. All right. Speed. Speed, yes. The symmetric algorithms like AES, DES, those are much faster than the asymmetric ones, RSA or the Diffie-Hellman. Yes. So a lot faster, orders of magnitude faster. So a lot faster. So most systems want to use a symmetric key because it runs faster, particularly if you're transmitting, megabits at a time. You'd like to go through a fast algorithm. Of course, if you're using AES or it's a symmetric key algorithm, you have to share the key with somebody in a secure way. In other words, if I'm going to send something to you encrypted with the AES algorithm, somehow we have to share the key. I have to have a key and give it to you in a way that nobody else can see it. Now, asymmetrical public key algorithms, everybody can know the public key and you can do that. So there is hybrid cryptography that uses both. It starts off using the public key algorithm to send a key to the other side, and then it uses AES after that. So you start, it makes up with an AES key, just as random number, almost any random number works for an AES key. I think if you have 17 0 bits in a row or 17 1 bits in a row, it weakens the key. But that doesn't happen very often. You can do the arithmetic, it happens every once, 2 to the 17. Anyway, it's rare, but those keys are bad. Most people don't even bother to check it. All right, so you make up a key, and then using public key or RSA, you send that 128-bit key to the other side. Now, even though the RSA algorithm is slow, it doesn't take long to encrypt a 128-bit key. You send it to the other side decrypts it using the other private key of that public key pair, and now you both have the AES key, and you've shared it because it's gone over the network, but it was encrypted with RSA, so nobody else can see it. And so now you both have an AES key. All the traffic after that, after the initialization, all the traffic is encrypted with the AES key, the symmetric key algorithm, and then you use it. At the end of the session, when you're done, and you log off or you close your browser or something, then it just discards the key and makes up a new one next time. Okay, you break up with that. There are systems that do this. There's secure socket layer and transport socket layer. Secure socket layer started a couple of decades ago, and it was deprecated back about 2015, so almost 9 years ago. Everybody's using transport layer security. That's the S in HTTPS. S is for secure. And if it's secure, it's using TSL, which does the hybrid security as I explained it. Now, when you use this system, it can also authenticate the endpoints because the public key has got the proper certificate, and you can validate the endpoints. Typically, in most systems, you only validate the server. In other words, if I'm connecting to a system using HTTPS, when I get the public key, I can look and see who's got the certificate. Is this certificate good for that server? If it's not, well, then I shouldn't use it. It also can work the other way. If you need to, the server can authenticate the user. That generally doesn't happen except for specific systems where, well, you might imagine you want to connect to a server, or you want only certain users to connect to you, and you want to validate who they are and don't let just anybody in. Okay. Encryption backdoors. Over the years, people have thought about having an encryption system where you can encrypt and decrypt things, but somebody has the super key that can decrypt anything. In other words, if all the class has keys, I might have that super key that can decrypt anything. These algorithms usually proposed by governments because governments somehow want to always know what's going on. There's two ways to do it, basically. You can have the super key that decrypts anything. You need an algorithm that supports the super key. Or you can have all the encryption keys in some database that they can look that key if they need to. Here's another clicker question. Okay? Your question. Let's try that. Oh, wait a second. Something's not working. Okay. Hopefully you can see that now. All right. Try again. Have to guess. Oh, it's not. Okay. Holding it towards yourself is not do any good at all. I'm still doing it. Oh, that is the question. Anybody need cards? I got more cards today. Looking around you. I'm getting interested. Oh. All right. A and B are tied. B and D are tied. Oh, what is the answer? Let's see. Oh, shut up. Sorry. Remember to silence your phone when you come to class. Yeah. Sorry. Here we go. Yes. Okay. It uses asymmetric encryption to send symmetric keys. In other words, it uses RSA, which is an asymmetric algorithm, to send AES keys to symmetric. So B is the answer. Okay, B is pretty popular. Whoa. Oh. Stop sharing. Okay, back. Moving on. Key escrow. Well, in the concept of having a trap door or a way for people to, the government has in the past had systems that kept track of keys. You might have a case. Imagine, if you had employees and all the employees were encrypting things with their own personal key, but the boss needs a key to look at anything. Particularly, imagine the employee dies, gets run over by a bus. You don't want to lose everything that employee had because it was all encrypted. You'd like to have somebody, maybe the boss and his boss have to get together and do something to get the key. And they might have two halves of the key, which they have to merge together to look at that. And of course, governments want that. So they had a system several years ago. Oh, wow, 90s was many years ago. I remember, I was there. The government proposed an algorithm called skipjack and used the Clipper chip. The purpose was to put it in phones to encrypt phone conversations. So if you had a secure phone, sure, when the president talks to somebody on his cell phone, I'll bet it's secure. So they encrypted everything. It was a classified algorithm, which people didn't like because they wanted to see. You don't want to keep an algorithm secret. You want it to be public so people can look at it, so the experts can check it, make sure that it is secure. They found out it wasn't as secure as they thought, and people didn't trust it. People did not trust the government to be able to decrypt everything. They had keys in two parts, and they thought that, well, they give them to different agencies. Somebody thought, well, maybe they give it like one piece to the Supreme Court, one piece to the White House, and then if they decided they had to look at it, they had to put their key halves together and look at the information. Didn't go over. Nobody bought these things. I might point out, a couple of years ago in California, there were a couple of terrorists shot up a bunch of people, killed them. It's been happening for a while. And they had an iPhone, and the government thought that there had been calling other terrorists in their terrorist cell on their iPhone. And they want to know, who are they calling? So they wanted to be able to unlock the phone. Now, the phone has a password. My phone has a password. Everybody's phone has a password, at least in this class, because we did a survey. Everybody admitted to having a password, plus maybe face recognition and fingerprint recognition. They did kill the terrorist. They could take their fingers. They don't have to be alive to put them on the phone. But anyway, they needed to get into the phone. And they asked Apple to unlock it. And Apple said, no, we're not going to do it. Our customers want us to keep their information safe, and they don't want us giving the number of the decryption secrets to the government. So they said no, and it went on for a while. The government was upset, and the Apple was upset, and Apple users were supporting them. Eventually, a third party showed the government how to unlock it. But it was out of that was 2015, 2018, a few years later, the House said it's illegal. It's made a law saying, no, you cannot force companies to give encryption backdoors. So the government stood up for privacy and said no agency can force a private individual or company to give them the key or to have a backdoor to make it always capable of decrypting something. If you had two halves of a key, how would you put them together? Think about that for a minute. I thought about it. Figure this one out. Okay, that's good. That means just putting them end to end, one after the other. Okay, and okay. C is the most popular. People online liked A. People in class also like B, but the real answer is C. All the above, which is basically there's two ways to combine. Well, there may be more, but two easy ways is if you have a key, a bunch of bits, another bunch of bits, you can put them together. These become the low order bits, those become the high order bits. Or you could exclusive order them together. Each person has half an exclusive order and gets. Okay, good with that, everybody? Think that's worthy? All right, moving on then, maybe. All right, quick review of this before we go on to some other stuff. Again, symmetric keys. Symmetric keys use the same key to encrypt and decrypt. Somehow you have to securely give the key to the other side. Somehow they have to both know the key. You can use that with the hybrid encryption, or there are many other ways to do it. When you do that, everybody can send and receive with that key, and everybody can receive it, and it's fast. It works really well if you want to send information between two people. If I want to communicate with you. If you want to send with a group, well, the whole group will see everything. If we communicated as a class using AES, which is a symmetric key algorithm, then anything I send to you, everybody could see. Anything you sent to anybody else in the class, everybody could see. We're all using the same key. So if we wanted to do it with AES and allow private communications between us, we all have to have a key for each pair of people. And that's a lot of people. Okay, asymmetric public key encryption. There is one half the key. There's two keys, one to encrypt, one to decrypt. And one of them is public, everybody can know one, and other one is private. By the way, in RSA, either key can encrypt and the other key can decrypt. So you have your public key and your private key. You can use the public key to encrypt something and then decrypt it with the private key, or you can use the private key to encrypt it, and you can only be decrypted with the public key. That has a lot of value. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. It's not nearly as fast by orders of magnitude as symmetric. And of course, that works well if you want to send messages to everybody. If you want to have the whole class send messages to me, you could use public key encryption, use my public key. I only have the secret key that goes with that, so I'm the only one who could decrypt it. Everybody can send a message. I'm the only one. Also, I could send messages to you that were encrypted with my private key, and you could decrypt them, and you know it came from me because if you could decrypt it successfully with the public key, then it must have been encrypted with my private key. And because it requires two keys, it's not real good if you're going to encrypt something that you're going to look at yourself later on. In other words, if I want to encrypt, I wrote myself a program that keeps track of my passwords and all the systems, and I use AES encryption. I have one key that encrypts everything and decrypts everything, same key. I can only have to remember one key, and it's simple. Okay, again, how strong is it? If you're going to use brute force, it takes 2 to the n guesses. So it takes a lot. Now, if you could factor, if you could defactor, and if you could figure out an algorithm that could factor n into P and Q, then once you know P and Q, you subtract 1 from P and Q, and you get the total, and you do that, and it's easy to get the rest of it. Once you have that, then you can figure out the rest. As of now, everybody thinks it's relatively difficult to factor numbers. I mean, if it's a small number, what's the factor like 35? Oh, I can do that in my head. It's 5 and 7. But large numbers, particularly numbers are like 4,000 bits long, which means the factors are probably two numbers like 2,000 bits each. It's going to be a little tough. It takes a long time for the computer to do that. Some people have said, well, if you have quantum computers, a quantum computer can do that factoring. And therefore, if a quantum computer could factor a very large number in a reasonable amount of time, then they could break the RSA algorithm. I'm not worried. This is my opinion. I know opinions of others may differ, but and we have the quantum computer engineering group around here, somebody. Yeah, well, you know, the government is, and other places are just shoveling a lot of money out there for quantum computing because they have to. Because if, in fact, they ever do make quantum computing work, you don't want these guys to make it work, and you don't know how to do it. You'd like to be the guy who figures out how it works. But I don't think they're going to figure out how it works. There's a whole bunch of theoretical things that go in that. And Henry's opinion, it ain't going to happen. But an awful lot of faculty have been supported by trying to guess it. That's just my opinion. Maybe they will. Who knows? Okay, we have another question coming up.
IBM has a quantum computer.
Excuse me?
Oh, it's in IBM. I think they do have a quantum computer.
Oh, yes, they have a big quantum computer.
Yeah,
it runs
works
for
for he was excited.
Yeah, yes. And how many milliseconds does it stay up before it dies? Yeah, it doesn't run very long, and it has a very high error rate. Nobody has yet to really compute a problem that takes a long time with a regular computer. Oh, they've come close, but they haven't been able to do it quite yet. Okay. Right. Right side up, rotating around. All right. Ooh, A is real positive. Okay. Here in class, RSA was popular online with 60% of the people. Anybody else out there online want to? Oh, nope, I guess not. The biggest answer for online was all of the above, which is wrong. Let's see. Okay, we want all the students to send me data, but I do not want anyone else to view the data, including other students. I would use RSA. I think I just said that, actually. Everybody could encrypt it using my public key. I'm the only one who could decrypt it. All right. Okay, so the answer is RSA. All righty, moving on. Now, just because you have a good encryption algorithm, you have to use it properly. There are multiple ways to use the encryption algorithms. There are encryption modes, several different ways. Basically, all the algorithms you talked about are do an encryption block. They take a block of data. For AES, the block is 128 bits. DES is even smaller, it's just double word, 68 bytes. RSA, they're bigger, but generally about 255 bits. So small blocks. The simple way to encrypt something is what they call the electronic codebook mode. It's basically, we'll take a chunk of plain text, you encrypt it with the key, excuse me, sorry, and you end up with ciphertext. And you get the next plain text block, you encrypt with the key and get it to them. You keep doing this. It's pretty simple. Each block of plain text is encrypted, and you get a block of ciphertext. Simple enough. The problem with that, well, the big problem is that if two of these plain text blocks are identical, then the ciphertext blocks will be identical. And here's an example. They have this picture of the Linux penguin, and they encrypt that. You can still see that it's the penguin there, even though the data is all mashed up, because blocks that were identical, the white blocks come out as the same encrypted. So each block is encrypted. So that's not a very secure system, because often there are repeating blocks, and you're giving the cryptanalysis a lot of information if they see two blocks of ciphertext that are the same. Most systems use stream encryption or chaining, where information from one encryption is used to encrypt the next block. Here's cipher block chaining, which is pretty straightforward. Okay, we'll start in the middle, because it's the simplest. You take the plain text and you exclusive order the plain text with the ciphertext from the previous block. Then you take that encrypted sum and you encrypt it with the key, and that gives you a ciphertext. And again, that ciphertext is used to exclusive order with the plain text of the next block. Then you encrypt the result, you get ciphertext, so forth and so on. So if there's any change, it will flow all the way down. The first plain text block starts with an initialization vector, which is just a random bunch of bits used to start this. But you have to keep track of that random bunch of bits. It's random bits which you have to save it. The random bits that you use to encrypt it have to be the same random bits that you use to decrypt it. The advantage here is that if you're sending or storing or encrypting the same text, but you use a different initialization value, it'll all be different. So I can encrypt the same stuff multiple times using different initialization values, and it's different ciphertext, which makes it all the more difficult to decrypt. Oh, well, if you don't know the key. If you know the key, though, you just take that initialization value, decrypt the block, exclusive order with that initialization value, you get the plain text, and you can see goes through. This decryption can be easily parallelized because you have all these ciphertext blocks. Those are all given. So if you're doing the third block here, you need the information from the second, but we already have that. So you can do this all in parallel. That's useful because some of these things take time. You'd like to be able to do this quickly. And you can see any change in the encryption, say this block is different, then everything after that is going to be different. And as I mentioned, the initialization vector is just a dummy ciphertext. It doesn't have to be secret. You can keep it well known. Typically, it's appended to the message so that if you send it or store it, the other side can get the initialization vector and use that to decrypt it. It's typically a random value. You just use a random number generator to do that. Again, as I mentioned, if you use a different initialization vector every time, then the ciphertext is different every time. Also, you might, you might want to protect or have a checksum that checks that initialization value to make sure it hasn't been changed. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. There are multiple ways to do this. We had cipher block chaining, CBC. There's also cipher feedback method, which is very similar. The other one we took the ciphertext in exclusive order with the plaintext. Here, we take the key, well, starting in the middle. You take the previous ciphertext, you encrypt it, and then you exclusive order with the plaintext. You go on. So you're making a random stream of bits and exclusive ordering that with the plaintext to get the ciphertext. Yes. It's bit, okay. Bit by bit exclusive OR. Exclusive OR is like there's and, or, and exclusive OR. Exclusive OR is true if say you want to exclusive OR A and B. If A is true and B is false, then the exclusive OR is true. If A is false and B is true, then the exclusive OR is true. But if they're both false or both true, the result is false. And it works, you exclusive OR two things together, and exclusive OR with one again comes back the way it was. This kind of works pretty well like that. I'll try to come up with some examples next time. Yeah, Google it, you'll learn it well. Okay. So, yeah, so exclusive OR things together, exclusive OR them again, they come back. And again, they're using the initialization vector to start this. This just makes a chain of random numbers, exclusive OR with the plain text. And you can decrypt it, very similar. They always have encrypt. This one, again, you're making this random number, then you're decrypt, then you're exclusive OR with the ciphertext, go on and on and on and on. That's how it works. I will not ask you the details. Zoom uses and other systems use the gallows counter mode, GCM. And there are several of these stream modes. They all work better than the electronic codebook method, sometimes known as the electronic cookbook method. Here, it just takes an initialization vector, considers that a number. Then you increment, add 1 to it, and that's your counter, and then you encrypt that value, and then you exclusive OR with the plaintext, and now you have ciphertext. Then you increment it again. The advantage here is it works very well in parallel because you don't necessarily have to increment. You can just add 2 and get here, or add 3 and 4. You want to do like 8 at a time. You can imagine how you could add it multiple times. And then you just have this value, encrypt that. Basically, again, you're making a random bit stream, which you are exclusive ORing with the plain text to get the ciphertext. And it works very similarly to result. The rabbit, yeah, I used to have rabbits, and the rabbit and the rat. A couple of years ago, we were on, remember the pandemic? Anybody remember the pandemic? Yeah, I bet you do. We were online only, and I had the rat and the rabbit would come back and make snide remarks during class, but I still kind of like them. I have to figure out a way to do that. But the rabbit would tell you that, yes, if you get a Zoom, everybody's using this password with Zoom. They think they're making it secure. No way. That's because when they send you the Zoom ID, they send you the password. Anybody who gets hold of that Zoom ID is going to get hold of the password. So it doesn't do you any good at all. Oh, but Zoom tells you it's all encrypted. They make it think it's done. By the way, everything is encrypted whether you have a password or not. Password just lets you log in. Yeah. So a university requires a password. As you might note, in this class, there is no password. Because I think it's worthless. Okay, but let's do another question here. And this is question. Right? Oh, all right, try this. I guess it's not going to be fun. All right. Okay, nobody voted E, that's good. All right, yes, D was real popular. Yes, almost everybody online, and a lot of people in class voted with D. Okay, stop sharing this. Yes, all of the above. it should be random. If it's a pattern, that allows you to decrypt. Append it to the data, yes, you have, because to decrypt it, you're going to need the same initialization vector that you use to encrypt it. And it should be different every time. So if you send data that's the same, then it won't look the same in the ciphertext. Yes, sir. It doesn't give you a lot of information. Now, I use systems where I encrypt it, but most of the texts tell me that it doesn't add enough information. Let's back up a bit here. Maybe. Let's look at cipher block chaining. Okay. Of course, you need this to encrypt it. To decrypt it, you have that. Oh, you have to have the same one. Well, okay. If you knew what the initialization vector is, you don't encrypt it, so everybody knows it. That allows them to decrypt this, but they still have to figure out the encryption to do it. So it doesn't really add a lot to it. Okay, moving on. There are multiple encryption systems for cell phones. There's the wired equivalent privacy. By the way, equivalent means it's supposed to be as private as a wired network. They've tried to make cell phones as secure as landlines, which are secure until somebody cuts the wires and puts their alligator clips on it and sees what's going on. Fact, you can take, if you have access to wires, the little thin wires, you can wrap it around a nail with another wire and make, anyway, you can actually receive the signal without having to break the wire. Okay, so they had WEP way back in '97, and it was widely used, but there were several flaws in it. It just didn't work well. People keep making these things because they think the small phones, your cell phone, isn't powerful enough to use them. Several years ago, Dr. Yuan had a security class, and part of the assignments, right in class, they broke WEP. You have to have a receiver that will receive all the messages. Typically, the receiver receives only messages sent to the address of your computer, to the address of your network port. But it's a MAC address. But you can get receivers that receive everything. And once it receives everything, then it can get all the messages and it can see. So you could have one computer with that special port, the other one's sending things with WEP, and you can force a lot of messages. And after about 5,000 messages, which only takes a couple seconds, it could guess the password. It was pretty good at it. It was kind of slick. There have been all sorts of these people thinking that, oh, your cell phone is not powerful enough to do high performance encryption. Well, that's not true. My cell phone has dual processors. It's got memory. It's pretty darn fast. It's about as fast as my laptop. So yeah, it can do lots of this stuff. Anyway, if you don't think it's fast this year, next year it will be, because these things keep getting faster and faster every year. So, my opinion, don't ever think that your little phone can't do something, because it probably can. Now we have different encryption algorithms. There is WPA, which came out in 2003. There is WPA3, which uses AES 256 in GCM. That's the glycos, however pronounce that word, counter mode. We just looked at that one. We haven't talked about hashes. We'll get to that. That's standard hash algorithm 384. And so that is pretty secure. Yes, we talk about AES is secure. That's the big AES. Uses the Wi-Fi certified. In other words, if you're going to use the logo, you got to do it right. And so that is secure. Hashes. Let's talk about cryptographic hashes. A hash, we got checksum. You take all the bytes of the data and you do something with them to form a number. That is the hash. An easy idea is to simply add all the bytes together. That checksum. It's very simple. It's not very secure, but it's very simple. If you think about just adding all the bytes together, if one byte is changed by adding one to it, and another byte is changed by subtracting one to it, then you get the same sum. There are other more clever systems that look all the bytes and come up with a checksum that will be different if you change any byte or any bit in the file. You want something that's easy to generate. You don't want to take a lot of computing time. Something that you can't go backwards. That is, given a hash, you cannot make a data file that hashes to that value. So it's very easy to give it a data file, to use the algorithm, take all the bytes of the data file and create the hash, but it's very, very difficult that given a hash, you can create a data file that has that hash. And of course, any change in the file will change the hash. Basically, they are called one-way functions. That is, you can compute, when you're given the text, you can compute the hash. But given the hash, it's very, very difficult to compute the text. Now, we have a bunch of these algorithms, but they are not mathematically proven to be one way. But they are so far proven to be very difficult. And here's an example. I'm just using the very simple sum because it's easy to do it. Everybody got it. So if you change, so let's have a message that's only 5 bytes long. And here are the bytes. If you add them all up, you get 64. You can get out your calculator and check me. So we change a byte. We changed, it was 24, changed to 13. Now we get a different one. But if we change a couple bytes, again, this one goes, this was 17, we go down 2, this was 2, we go up 2, 4, and now we get the same hash. There are several hashing algorithms, and they've got new ones over the years. The standard hash algorithm 1, was created in 1993 and creates a 160-bit hash. It's relatively easy to calculate. We're not going over the details of encryption algorithms. We're not going over the real details of standard hash algorithm because it's not important to know that. If you need to generate a hash, use the library functions available in Python or Java or C that compute those. People who made those libraries have tested it and you're most likely to work. You create your own, I've seen student programs, they're not always likely to work. So there's also standard hash algorithm 3, there's standard hash, there's SHA 224, 225, 384. Yes, 384 was the one that Wi-Fi uses. So it uses a 384-bit hash. And there's several others. One out there used to be MD5. It was found not to be as secure as you'd like, meaning instead of taking a nearly infinite amount of time, it takes like half an infinite amount of time. Interesting enough, the Cyber Command has a bunch of numbers around their logo, a bunch of numbers, that is the MD5 hash of their mission statement. Hope they don't change the mission statement, change the logo. When you put keys into a system, a lot of people say, enter a key, and you're going to use that to generate a hash. Well, English letters are not real good to make a key because there's 93 keyboard characters you can make, including all the shifts and everything. So that's far less than 256 bits. All the keyboard characters generate a character whose upper bit is 0. So that's, that bit's always 0. And of course, if you're using English or even keys that people make up, and we know people make terrible keys, they're not very random. But if you take the hash of that key, if you input an English key, type in something, 8 character long, using upper and lowercase letters like they tell you you're supposed to do, and then you make an SHA1 or SHA256, whatever hash algorithm you like, hash that and use those bits as the key. That is going to be random because the SH bits are pretty random. So you can use those bits. So frequently, in order to ensure integrity, you can, when you create a message that you're going to send, you can hash that message and append the hash to it. When it gets to the other side, people can then hash themselves and see if the 2 hashes. Now, if you want to be real secure, you encrypt the hashes. So you calculate the hash and you encrypt it with your favorite encryption algorithm, send it to the other side. The other side computes the hash, decrypts the hashes received, and checks to see if they're the same. If they are, then it's likely it's correct. That's known as a message authentication code, or MAC or MAC. It's used to confirm that the message has not been changed and that it came from the proper origin. So again, you hash the message, encrypt it with the key. The other side, when they get the message, they decrypt the hash, calculate the hash themselves, and see if the two hashes are the same. If it is, then you know it must have come from somebody who has the key and that none of the bits of the message have been changed. Otherwise, you get a different hash. So that ensures integrity. You know that it hasn't been changed, and you know that it comes from the origin where you thought it came from. So message integrity and origin integrity. Okay, I think I just said this. When you do this, you can use any algorithm you like. It can be symmetric key algorithm like RSA, or you can use public key. It doesn't matter as long as you just encrypt it and they use the appropriate key to decrypt it. And when you create the file, you compute the hash, encrypt it, append to the message. When you read it, you got a picture here. Okay, you create the message, then you create the hash, encrypt it, append it to the message, do whatever you want to, either store it or send it to somebody. When it gets to the other side, they separate the hash from the message, they decrypt the hash that they received, and then they compare them and see if they're the same. Now that provides message integrity. You know the message hasn't been changed, but it doesn't provide confidentiality because you're sending the message in plain text, so anybody can see it. But often that's not the case. You aren't so concerned. You might be sending it out to a large group of people, but you can know who sent it. Does this really come from the authority that you believe it came from? For instance, if somebody sends out a file that they want everybody in class to use, well, that sounds good, but you want to make sure it came from me. If it was encrypted with a key that I know and you and I share, or I could use my private key and you could decrypt it with my public key, then you know it came from me. There's an interesting system that allows you to send things without necessarily encrypting the message. Some places, some countries do not like encryption. Strangely enough, France, who's a modern European democracy, didn't allow encryption until about a decade or so ago. It was against the law. Government had the right to see everything. So chafing and winnowing is a system where you can use it. There's Ron Rivest. Remember Rivest is the guy, the R in the RSA, and one of the authors of the big white textbook for algorithms. Yes. Okay, how does this work? Well, the idea is you send a whole stream of messages, many of which are just gobbledygook, random junk messages. Some of them are meaningful. Some of them make sense. And the ones that make sense have a good message authentication code. If you're sending a whole bunch of packets that have a data byte with them, or a bunch of bytes, or a bit, depends on how many, you can send a bunch of bytes, or maybe usually a small amount of data byte, and a message authentication code that has been encrypted. The receiver checks the message authentication code, decrypts it, and sees if it fits. If it works, then that's good message. If it doesn't work, just discard it. So you're sending lots of, a person trying to hack their way into this thing is looking at all these packets, and they cannot determine which packets are good and which packets are to be discarded, because even though the data is not encrypted, they can't tell which ones they want to look at. So, Alice and Bob. Hey, I don't know, anybody look at Tales of Alice and Bob out there? Nobody. I wasted all my artwork. Go out and look at Tales of Alice and Bob. Somebody told me I should make a video, but okay. Tales of Alice and Bob covers this, but Alice wants to send one bit at a time on a packet. Now, we put a serial number on it, so we can know if we miss one, and a MAC. And then you send it off there. So you send it with a bit, a serial number, and a MAC. And not all of them are good. Some of them with serial numbers are junk. So, in a sense, all sorts of meaningless packets. So on the other side, Bob's picking them up, looking at them in order, and then computing the MAC and computing the hash code. The hash code covers the sequence number and the bit, say more, and then trying to see if it's correct. If the MAC is bad, it is tossed up. But if it has a good MAC, then it appends all those bits or all those bytes together and gets the message. The message was never encrypted, but still you can't read it. A lot of time when you store passwords in a system, they will not store the password itself, but they'll store a hash of the password. They might use SHA-256 to hash the password, and then they'll store that hash in a database of passwords. The advantage of that, well, let me go on. When you enter a password, the system will form the hash, compare it to the hash they stored for your password. If the hash is matched, then they know you had the right password. The advantage of this is that if somebody breaks in, gets the file of passwords, well, if you just had the passwords, they'd have everybody's passwords. But if you have the hashes, nobody knows how to go backwards with the hashes. So even though they have the hashes, they don't know a password that would create that hash. So regardless of the fact that they have all the passwords, you can even keep them public. If somebody knows all the hashes, they take the password, they can't find a password that will hash to those because it's one way. Does that make sense? Okay, another question here. Oh, we're not going to do this one. Chafing when I just talk, encrypts. Well, it could use A or B, doesn't matter. It occasionally sends the random data. It does encrypt the MAC. Yeah, A, B, and C are correct. So figure that one out. Oh, we'll not ask that question. Who wrote that question anyway? Okay, I think that's it for today. Read chapter 11 in the textbook. That's it. Stay tuned. Sometime between now and the Wednesday class, I'm going to dream up some homework. I've been working on it. I have most of it written. As soon as I get enough questions out there, I will be putting it out on Blackboard and sending an email to everybody and put an announcement out there. So another assignment is coming. Okay, that's it. Anybody online have any questions? None? No questions? Good. Everybody understands it. Then you have no problem with those. Oh, we have a couple. Okay, everybody thinks they understand everything, so they'll have no problem with the questions when they come out, the homework. All right, bye.